Vivek has a plan. He's been talking a lot, but not really getting into the details. And in his recent speech a couple days ago, he went deep into not only what he was going to do, how he was going to go about it. And when he talks about slashing 75% of the federal government, the first one on his list is the FBI. And I think he explains perfectly why it shouldn't exist, how it got corrupted, and where we're going from here.
But now let's come to actually how we not only rescind the regulations that Congress never authorized. How about actually rescinding the existence of bureaucratic agencies that Congress never authorized? And I'm going to start with an agency that, to many people's surprise, was not, despite getting appropriations yearly, was not actually authorized by Congress. Let's talk about the FBI. This is an agency. If I'm going to make a book recommendation to everybody, I like to write books, but I also like to read them from time to time. G-Man. It's actually a great book. It's not some Republican guy. I think he's like a Yale historian. Came out in the last couple of years. Pulitzer Prize winner, laying out the history of J. Edgar Hoover's legacy in the FBI. How this was an institution that was created to be corrupt from the beginning. The same one that used illegally collected tapes to threaten Martin Luther King Jr. into committing suicide, they tried to do, is now being used to target political opponents of a different persuasion. Where does the corruption come from? It comes from something you'd predict should exist for a bureaucracy that sits in between a DOJ, like the equivalent of local prosecutors at the local level, and say other police enforcement arms like the U.S. Marshals, which haven't been corrupted in the same way as the FBI. So this is what the situation looks like today. That's the status quo. And in more detailed plans, for ease here, we've used a short version. There'll be more detailed versions right now up on Vivek2024.com, laying out even more detailed reorganization plans. This is deeply pragmatic. Take the 35,000 employees at the FBI. 20,000 of them are in non-essential functions, back office roles, many of whom report into, of all building names, I'm not making it up, the J. Edgar Hoover building right here in Washington, D.C. They're going to go home when we shut it down and find honest work in the private sector. But 15,000 of those employees are going to be reorganized into the U.S. Marshals, into the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network at the U.S. Treasury, into other parts, the DEA, that are taking on the drug enforcement problems that we have in this country. Because part of the problem when you have a bureaucracy that runs this deep is that they find things to do that they shouldn't have been doing in the first place. Post 9/11, what happened with the FBI is they took on counterterrorism, from drug enforcement to child sex trafficking to financial crimes and white-collar network enforcement. These are areas where people had no specialization in the first place, and they're rotating, so we're at once less effective in actually enforcing the laws on the books, while also creating the formula for the corruption that we now suffer today. And this is where I think we face a choice. Do you want incremental reform, replace Christopher Wray with James Comey or James Comey 2.0, or recognize that it's actually the underlying machine that was the source of the corruption itself? And I believe the only correct answer to restore the integrity of our law enforcement apparatus will be to begin with shutting down an institution like the FBI itself.
He could not be more correct. 20,000 of their jobs are bureaucracy, with only 10,000 being federal agents. And we wonder why it's a tribe, and why we wonder why we have all these office politics. And most importantly, we wonder why it's so easy to influence and how they'll get their own agency, and then they just have their ideas of what they should do. The best part about this is, although the likelihood of Vivek being hired in 2024, very low. 2028, I think he's got a better chance than anyone else. But he's actually giving the plan. He is explaining explicitly how to do it. He doesn't even need to be the president to implement this change. He's letting people know that we can definitely remove these agencies. And I think if he accomplishes it, he'll end up being the president with the highest unemployment record of all of United States history. And I think he'll equally be credited with creating more jobs in the private sector than anyone else in American history. What an experiment. It's a great time. If you don't know about Vivek, take the time to really learn. There are very few people who would truly qualify as a perfect American. He's got an American story. He has an immigrant's tale. He came from nothing and built up a biotech company. And now he merely wants to turn us back to a republic, reinstate the Bill of Rights. He likes the nuclear family. It is amazing how few people will cover him because he is truly a threat to any government trying to fear us into giving them more power. I'm Tristan. This has been Radically Rational Radio. I hope you learned something. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next episode. Stay resilient.